Hello, authors, book lovers, and storytellers. Welcome to another session here in Readers Magnet's featured author interview. So my name is Leah, and I'm your host for today. And with me is one of the Readers Magnet's featured author. And today, he will be sharing to us what this book is all about, him as an author, and of course, what inspired him to write this book. A Pittsburgh native boasts a diverse background that includes a 30-year career in the U.S. Air Force, culminating in the rank of colonel, a service in Vietnam War. Following his military retirement, he became involved in local government in Arizona, serving as a mayor and contributing to the city's recognition as an all-American city. More recently, him and his wife relocated to Arkansas, where he wrote the book titled To Protect Those Unable to Protect Themselves, Saving the Unborn. This is a book dedicated to the protection of the unborn. So yes, everyone, let's all welcome our one and only Mr. James M Cavanaugh.
Thank you very much, Leah. Looking forward
Hi,
to
James.
spending an hour with you.
All right, thank you so much, James. So yes, take the stage.
Okay. Yes, in the title itself, obviously we're trying to save those who are unable to protect themselves, and we're saving the unborn. 60 million of unborn babies have been aborted since the 1960s. We do 2,000 to 3,000 a week in the United States. Those numbers aren't just alarming, they're tragic. And not just for pro-life people, I think for most of mankind, numbers like that are considered a tragedy. And I hope with this book we can do something about that. The objective is to reduce the number of abortions in the United States. And how we're going to go about that is, first off, we want to strengthen the belief in the rights of the unborn. We know all about abortion rights, the right to abort, to kill. We know about women's right to choose whether to abort or to bring the child to birth. We don't talk much about the baby. Since fertilization, the baby has had one objective, one purpose, and that is to join us, to be as we. And I believe that baby has a right to that. And we're going to emphasize in the book, and it'll start right in the first chapter. I think the information that you'll see in the book is going to be new to many of you. I know that in the first chapter about pregnancy, a woman who's been through that is not going to learn anything new. But I hope, ladies, that as you read through the book, you'll find it very interesting and informative. We want to emphasize the importance of instructing those who are going to be making decisions about pregnancy and abortion in the next 15 years. So I have a suggestion on how we can do that using material available to us and informing those in the high school time of their lives. And then we're going to get into suggestions and recommendations. Our recommendations are different from what you see in other places. And so I'd ask you to hang in there and we'll get to those. Like in the next chart, we call the process chart. That's the flow of this presentation. It's also the flow of the book. So I'll let you glance through that. And I prepared a script. I'm going to refer to the script. I don't want to shoot from the hip. I want you to know exactly what I meant in writing the book. So therefore, we'll use a script. And also, I'll refer to specific comments, excerpts from the book itself as we proceed through the presentation. So let us begin. Let us begin with the two participants and describe the growth and changes of each during the 9 months of pregnancy. And the chart can be removed. There you go. Using extracts from the book, we'll start with the baby. And then we'll discuss the 9 months of the pregnant lady. So let us start with the baby. Just a few excerpts from the book. In the first month after fertilization, the zygote embryo, in the first 2 weeks of the embryonic period, many people refer to the embryo as a zygote, is implanted into the uterine lining. A sac grows around it and protects the baby for the length of pregnancy. The placenta also forms and will be the connectivity transferring nutrition from the mother to the baby. By the end of the 4th week, eyes begin to develop, the heart starts beating, and the baby will be slightly smaller than a grain of rice. You were once smaller than a grain of rice. In month number 2, the heartbeat can be detected with an ultrasound. Buds that will become limbs start to form. The brain, sensory organs, and the digestive tract begin to take shape. Cartilage in the embryo begins to be replaced by bone. At the end of the 2nd month, the fetus is about 1 inch in length, and the baby will soon have a name change from embryo to fetus. In the 3rd month, fingernails, toenails, ears, and teeth begin to form, and limbs, including hands, feet, fingers, and toes, become well developed. By the end of the month, the baby is fully formed with all organs and extremities present. The baby weighs about 1 ounce and has grown to about 4 inches. Along with the arrival of month number 4, the heartbeat of the baby becomes clearly audible through a Doppler instrument. The teeth become denser, and the baby starts to make various movements, including stretching, yawning, and sucking the thumb. The reproductive organs are now visible on an ultrasound, enabling the doctor to let the mother know whether the baby is a girl or a boy. By month's end, the baby may measure about 6 inches and weigh 4 ounces. The mother may begin to feel the baby moving as we visualize the 5th month. Hair starts to grow. At the end of the month, the baby will be about 10 inches long and weigh between a half a pound and a full pound. In 6th month, their eyes may open, and the baby will respond to external stimuli, such as sounds, by increasing pulse or by actually moving. At month end, the baby will be about 12 inches long and weigh up to 2 pounds. During the 7th month, hearing will become fully developed, and the baby will react to sound, pain, and light. At the end of the month, the baby will be about 14 inches long and weigh between 2 and 4 pounds. In the 8th month, the baby continues to mature. A rapid development of the brain occurs. The baby can see at this stage and begins to kick more frequently. Much of the organs and systems are fully developed, but the lungs still need more time to develop. By the end of the month, the baby is close to 18 inches long and weighs close to 5 pounds. The lungs mature during the 9th month in preparation for birth. The baby may move less during the final few weeks and will move into position for birth. With the head down near the birth canal, the baby is now 18 to 20 inches long and weighs 7 or 8 pounds. And now we present a beautiful human being who has been waiting 9 months for us to witness. Regarding the woman in the pregnancy period, medical practitioners calculate the start of pregnancy from the first day of the woman's last period. The first day of the woman's last period is the beginning of pregnancy. Therefore, week number 1 of the first of the 3 trimesters of pregnancy begins before fertilization and conception. In fact, possibly as long as 2 weeks before. Typically, during the 2nd week of the first trimester, ovulation occurs. In the 4th week, a pregnancy test could come back positive. Morning sickness may become a frequent partner starting in week 6. A woman may experience frequent urination needs, breast tenderness, nausea, dizziness, cramping, fatigue, headaches, and other discomforts. Many women claim the 2nd trimester as the easiest of the 3 pregnancy periods. increased appetite, renewed energy, higher sex drive are symptoms of the second trimester. The baby starts to show, excuse me, and breasts begin to develop, increase in size, preparing to make breast milk. Excuse me. I hope that helps. With the arrival of the third trimester, discomfort increases, exhaustion may set in, and aches and pains share every minute of the pregnant woman's life. Around the 37th to 38th week, the pregnant mother may lose her mucus plug, which had blocked the opening to the cervix. Early signs of regular labor include contractions, pelvic pressure, dull pain, and restless tenderness. Hopefully all goes well, and we have a happy daddy properly congratulating a happy and very tired mommy. The chapter will end with the fact that the book addresses not just the beauty of pregnancy, but also abortion, in which there is no beauty. We will mention 4, I have 12 things in the book, but 4 of the 12 reasons included in the book that may cause a woman to discontinue her pregnancy, and 8 concerns and wishes of the unborn seeking to live. Let us speak for the baby in the womb through our empathy, simulated though it may be. As the woman, we can't afford a child or another child. My life is at risk for psychological or medical reasons associated with the pregnancy. I'm a free person. This is my body, and I alone will decide what will be done with my body. This pregnancy directly resulted from rape or incest, and I do not wish to have the baby from this criminal act. Acting as the unborn, we may be concerned that I am entirely dependent on one person for my continued existence. I cannot vote, speak, cry out, or argue on my behalf. How do I express my wishes? I can't. I asked my mother to do for me what her mother sacrificed for her. I am sorry that because of me, my mother will gain weight, alter her lifestyle, become ill, and suffer during birth. But there's nothing I can do. Please don't blame me. I want to be one of the kids, go to school, become an adult, learn an occupation, grow old, and feel like my life was worthwhile. I want to share in the act of loving, to love, and to be loved. I want to join others in seeking the truths about creation. And if I conclude there's a single supreme creator, I want to praise and thank this special being for my life. I want to live. One wants to choose and one wants to live. How do we assist both? And that's what the book's all about. Sorry for the coughing. I just got over a flu, by the way. Okay. Let us then use statistics to ascertain the major factors impacting our high rate of abortion. Data can be employed to correlate the rate of abortion to factors such as race, financial status, age of seekers, education, religious affiliation, number of abortions per person, parenting, and other interesting relationships. Today, we will limit the discussion on statistics to what I believe are the 2 most important and impactful factors, and let those numbers speak for themselves. I'm referring to race and single parenting, which unfortunately stand out as significant contributors to our terribly high rate of abortions. Race and single parenting. For every 5 babies living within the womb of a woman, 4 will be born and enjoy the privileges of living as an American on our planet. The 5th will not join them. White, Black, Hispanic, Asian, and Native Americans all share in the same tragedy. However, all is not equal. as abortion statistics enlighten us to the alarming fact that Black women are 4 times more likely to have an abortion as are white women, and Hispanics 2.5 times more likely. It is not difficult to conclude that single parenting may be a major contributor to this glaring problem. In the 1960s, between 25 million and 27 million of families with children were led by two parent households. About 3 to 3.5 million were led by a single parent. Now, dual parents, still about 25 to 27 million, but single parenting is now about 13 million of families with children are led by single parents. In other words, 1/3 of all families with children are led by a single parent. 70% of teenage pregnancies are in single parent families. 70%. Single parent families make up 1/3, well under a half of all families with children, but they make up 70% of teenage pregnancies. 18% of white children, 25% of Hispanic children, and 45 to 49% of Black children live in single parent homes. Again, let the numbers seep in and speak for themselves. It is not for me to judge. However, we can say in general, at least, and in general, that single parent and single parenting are not synonymous. One may be a superb individual. The other will always be a poor substitute for the historical lifelong standard. Many specific exemptions to that, exceptions to it. And I think it's a good standard to think about. Can't really discuss abortion without discussing the various views describing when the living being within the womb is to be recognized as a human being, a person. Multiple beliefs and opinions abound, but the most effective number about 7. And the first of those is that the unborn becomes a human being, i.e. a person at conception. The second is once twinning is determined. Next, once safely in the uterine lining. Another is when a heartbeat is recognized. And 3 additional ones associated with the nervous system. Each belief is explained in the following, without prejudice by the author. Let us start with the most widely held belief, and that is conception. Upon fertilization, parts of human beings are actually transformed into something very different from what they were before. They have been changed into a single whole human being during fertilization. The sperm and the egg cease to exist as such, and a new human being is produced. For the next 9 months in the womb, and who knows for how long while living along with us on this earth, that being will experience a life of continuous development. But again, that development started at fertilization. It's point 0. It started then. Next up is entitled twinning. Up until about 12 days post-fertilization, the embryo has the potential to split into twins. That which was a single being, a single embryo, may become 2 or more distinct embryos or beings. So was it a human being at fertilization? No, not according to some very intelligent scholars. To quote, an individual is not an individual and therefore not a person until a process of restriction is complete and determination of particular cells has occurred. Then and only then is it clear that another individual cannot come from the cells of this embryo. Many contend that human beingness does not start until implantation in the uterine wall. The being conceived at fertilization cannot live unless safely implanted into the uterine lining, and therefore should not be considered human until such is accomplished. That usually occurs 12 to 14 days after fertilization. Same period as twinning, actually, same time frame. Others believe that human life begins only after the heart starts beating, and that's about the 6-week period. There are 3 views that are based on neurological development. First, an embryo is not a human being until simple, undeveloped versions of many organs, including a rudimentary nervous system, exist. This usually takes place by the 8th week. A second view, this undeveloped nervous system is not enough, but must await a region of the brain called the thalamus to be developed, thereby enabling integration of the nervous system and therefore human thought, usually around their 20th week. And lastly, since death is recognized as the loss of the pattern produced by a cerebral electroencephalogram, then life should be recognized at the time when the fetus acquires that recognized pattern at about the 25th week. In vitro fertilization is also discussed in this chapter, as it definitely impacts beliefs that human beingness starts at conception. It is reasonable to question whether a zygote residing in a test tube should be recognized as a human being. Let's go to the book for that. The uniting of a man's sperm and a woman's oocyte within a test tube in a laboratory affects all theories on when human life commences, and particularly complicates front-end theories such as life begins at fertilization. The varieties of options for the embryo fertilized through IVF are unfortunately endless. The embryo may end up as a full-time, perfectly situated and happy resident in the wall of a woman's uterus. May fail to live in the test tube, may fail to survive the journey from test tube to womb, may be living frozen in the jar for decades, may be abandoned by owners, may be donated for implantation in another woman's uterus, may be donated for medical research, or may end up discarded as medical waste. There's considerable data regarding IVF from U.S. sources. The data does not appear sufficiently reliable as basis for opinion making or decision making. This failure does not hold true for Great Britain. According to the UK's Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority, that recorded IVF processes from 1991 to 2012, 3.5 million embryos had been created by IVF in the UK. About 1.4 million were implanted, but fewer than 1 in 6 of these human embryos resulted in a pregnancy. Nearly 1.7 million were discarded unused. Seven percent of the embryos created in that time frame in the UK were actually born. 7% of 3.5 million. Methods of birth control and abortion are discussed and dissected in our next chapter. The various forms of controlling birth before conception are explained, as well as the abortifacient potential existing in the so-called birth control pill. This is a vitally important distinction in the pill, which may strike many women as an unpleasant surprise. To be considered birth control, the contravening act must preclude fertilization. The condom and the diaphragm are 2 control methods which do stop the possibility of fertilization. The rhythm or natural method is another choice to contravene fertilization. These 3 methods qualify as birth control, but does the very popular so-called birth control pill qualify? Birth control pills command the pituitary gland to halt the ovaries from producing eggs, thereby preventing ovulation. They also produce mucus, making it difficult for sperm to enter the uterus. If these were the only mechanism employed to prevent pregnancy, the pill would be properly categorized as a contraceptive, a birth control method. However, The pill adversely affects the lining of the womb, making it hostile to implantation. Therefore, in many minds, the embryo, if brought to life by an earlier fertilization, may not be able to attach the uterine lining and therefore dies as an early abortion. I contend the birth control pill is an abortifacient. Some others disagree and identify the pill as a birth control device. Other methods of stopping a pregnancy that some people consider birth control include the intrauterine device and the morning after pill. However, both methods are more properly classified as abortifacient, for they may kill an embryo earlier conceived in the fallopian tube. Two methods of intentional abortion are medical abortion and surgical abortion. They are described in detail in the book, but briefly, medical abortion must be conducted in the early part of pregnancy, absolutely prior to the 10th week. The medical method incorporates use of the abortion pill mifepristone. It blocks progesterone, which stabilizes the lining of the uterus. By blocking progesterone, mifepristone cuts off blood and nourishment to the baby, who will soon die in the womb. Within the next 48 hours, the woman takes a misoprostol pill, which causes cramping and bleeding. The uterus will contract and initiate a miscarriage, forcing the dead baby out of the uterus. The surgical method of abortion is divided into 3 semesters. Each semester involves a different surgical approach. In describing the surgical methods in the book, I rely on detailed explanations provided by an expert in the subject matter, an esteemed doctor who now laments carrying out more than 1,000 abortions in the early part of his career. If you find that reading the words describing a surgical abortion can be a bit unpleasant, you may not want to explore the audio version. Listening to the actual killing of the defenseless baby in the womb can be more difficult than reading the words. Difficult to read, more difficult to hear. But we need to know and understand if we wish to make a difference in the future. Apologize for needing all this water, but I do need it, I'm afraid. I use the words abortion protective rather than abortion rights to describe a U.S. state which permits abortion, for I believe abortion is not a right. The right to kill exists only when defending oneself or other innocent persons from a lethal attack, and in times of war when defending one's nation. Neither instance even remotely exists in the killing of a defenseless being seeking life in the womb of a woman. Although the woman does not have the right to kill, she does possess the power to abort. This power does not flow from a right, but rather from her authority granted by an act of nature. The Supreme Court has taken center stage in the abortion question since January 1973, when in the now famous Roe v. Wade case, it ruled that the Constitution guarantees a woman the right to have an abortion. In this 7-2 decision, the justices refer to the 14th Amendment as the specific constitutional authority for its decision. The 14th Amendment was approved in post-Civil War 1866 and ratified 2 years later. Its primary purpose was to guarantee that previously enslaved people enjoying the same rights, freedoms, and liberties as all other citizens of the United States. The 7 justices believed that the concept of liberty, which is fundamental in this amendment, included the right to privacy for all citizens, not just those previously enslaved. And therefore, it was interpreted to guarantee the right to privacy to those citizens seeking an abortion. It is important to note that abortion was prohibited in most states when the 14th Amendment was ratified, but it is not mentioned within the amendment. In fact, neither the word abortion nor the right to an abortion is mentioned in the original Constitution nor the Bill of Rights. This fact will be important in a decision coming almost 50 years later. Justice Blackmun who wrote the decision for the majority, also devised a formula for implementation of the Supreme Court decision over the 9-month period of pregnancy. He divided them 9 months into 3 trimesters. In the first trimester, the state cannot limit access to abortions. In the second, the state can regulate but not prohibit abortions in the interest of the woman's health. In the third tier, which coincides with fetal viability, the state can prohibit abortion except in cases where the life or health of the woman is at risk. Over the following decades, the Blackmun formula was under attack in several Supreme Court cases, but weathered the challenges until early in 2022, when it was dismembered in its entirety. In Dobbs v. Jackson, a majority, albeit a very slim majority, ruled that the Constitution did not confer the right to an abortion. Justice Alito, writing on behalf of the majority, procuring an abortion is not a fundamental constitutional right because such a right has no basis in our Constitution's text or in our nation's history. We refer to the 10th Amendment as justification for the decision. The amendment states, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Wielding nothing but raw judicial power, Alito mentioned, the court in Roe v. Wade usurped the power to address a question of profound moral and social importance that the Constitution unequivocally leaves for the people. In other words, in Dobbs v. Jackson, they did not rule out abortion. They moved it to the states, for the states and the people to decide. It is important to note that the opposing opinions referenced in this document, that is the Constitution, they reference the same document, the Constitution, but they understood it differently. They used different amendments and they interpreted them differently. That unfortunately sums up the continuing uncertainty permeating the abortion issue. There is little comfort for the public when the judicial system is so unpredictable. Judge biases and differing interpretations of laws in the Constitution leave the public uncertain and worrisome regarding the future of abortion in America. Furthermore, actions from federal and state legislators further complicate abortion and lead to misunderstanding and conflict. The differing laws existing throughout the nation illustrate this unending conflict. Many states permit abortion with little or no restriction. Others deny or severely restrict. Women from restrictive states can have an abortion at abortion protective states. Many of our states ban abortion at a specific time in the gestation cycle. For example, abortion is banned after 24 weeks, 28 weeks, 32 weeks. As a result, those proposing such a bill willingly but unwantingly accept the fact that babies not far enough along in the development and therefore unable to satisfy the standard will be sacrificed. Notwithstanding the best intentions of incumbents, judicial and legislative actions are a failed approach to saving babies in the womb, or if one prefers, only partially successful. Judicial and legislative actions are simply a failed approach to saving babies in the womb, or if one prefers, only partially successful. In most narratives on abortion, writers express their view regarding abortion using real-life examples of babies suffering and dying in an abortion, or women suffering because of the lack of a safe, readily available medical resource. We aren't going there in this narrative. We already know the problems exist. Rather, let us seek out ways to reduce abortions, and in so doing, help those who oppose abortion, and yes, if agreeable to a realistically irrefutable proposal, even those who support a woman's choice. More on this later, soon. We have already demonstrated that judicial and legislative maneuvers are not the source for comfort and consistency. Let us not condemn, but rather offer complementary suggestions to significantly reduce abortions. Our first suggestion is not directly related to the subject of abortion. Rather, it flows from the title of the book, Taking Care of Those Unable to Care for Themselves. Some of us are good at that, some of us are not. We all need to be, and therefore our first suggestion applies to youngsters and their need to be the best they can be, and in so doing will strive to take care of those unable to care for themselves. I'm recommending a year-long, 1-hour class for students in their 11th or 12th grade, in which they just briefly touch upon important subjects deeply impacting their lives and affecting their futures. In fact, I suggested several titles for the course, and all include the subject of preparing for adulthood. The course will include mandatory subjects such as character, the sex act, pregnancy, abstinence, and the personal visualization of each student as an unborn, then a newborn. The course starts with character. Without an understanding and appreciation of character, the course will ultimately fail. The example of character in the book is a person who suffered through years of torture and loneliness, and then wrote of his and fellow airmen's bravery, patriotism, and adherence to the best attributes of humanity. The curriculum at discretion of the teacher might also include, and hopefully would include, subjects such as customs and courtesies, importance of good grammar, table manners, on and on. The objective is for the student to understand what it takes to be the best they can be and strive for it. And I'd like to go to the book to emphasize that if I could. Caring for the entirely innocent, voiceless, and defenseless among us is a trait consistent with those who strive to be the best they can be. Would it not be disappointing if that were not true? No one can be their very best if they do not care for and support those whose only chance of being anything at all is entirely dependent on others. And that is a fact. So let us help those who can and do care for themselves to the best they can be, so they can care for those who wish their support, need their support. The next recommendation discussed in this session is intended to directly reduce the rate of abortion and is therefore the single most significant part of the narrative. We place the final decision whether to abort or to proceed to giving birth in the hands of the pregnant woman, but only after assurance that she is absolutely clear-cut, straightforward, irrefutable, and doubtless understanding of the life-impacting ramifications of her decision. I employ 3 brief lesson plans that are to be strictly followed by the medical professional before either the medical or surgical abortion can take place. This surprising recommendation coming from a person who is pro-life, not pro-choice, results from my belief that womanhood, by its very nature, seeks goodness. And if made fully aware of the consequences of her decision, will more often than not choose the action that reflects goodness. The key is being fully aware and cognizant of the ramifications on the life of the baby, only seeking to live as she lives. Quickly, just to the first two lesson plans. The first one concerns pregnancy in general, so the woman understands that. The second one is the pregnancy, her medical situation, point at which the baby is during the gestation cycle. Those sorts of things are in that's first and second lesson plan. The third lesson plan is the key. And this is all about the baby. And this has to be read to the woman, and she has to sign, and she receives a copy of it. The living being within your womb can only become like you, and that is a human being. Its potential is singular. It cannot become anything but a human being. Although most humans believe the human life of the being within your body commenced at conception, one cannot prove that beyond any doubt, nor convince non-believers that it is true. Likewise, one cannot definitively prove human life begins at some specific time after conception. We can come together with one factual argument that can't be disputed, and that is, since fertilization of a man's sperm in your egg, the unborn being, regardless whether regarded as human at conception or later during the pregnancy, will become exactly the same species as you, his or her mother. It will be a human being. This fact is indisputable, absolute, definitive, certain, and strong enough for all to adhere to its certainty. In the act of abortion, the opportunity for existence as a human being that each of us was granted is denied to a being that could only be as we. Membership in humankind is its natural destiny, unless shattered by actions of the human race it was destined to join. Only death within the fallopian tube or womb, whether through natural cause or outside human intervention, will stop your unborn from being born. That is also a fact. You are vested with the most important power on earth. The power to deny life or bring on a living human being is now in your hands. She has to understand that fully before she can proceed to abortion. And I mentioned early in the lesson plan, but I didn't mention here, 24 hours after the lesson plan, she can make her decision. It is also the responsibility of these people to inform her of what other options she may have if she's willing to carry the baby to birth, but does not wish to raise the baby. Our remaining recommendation concern the opportunity of the pregnant woman to carry the child to fruition but not raise the child. There are three choices for the woman interested in this opportunity. First is adoption, second is foster care, and last is a formalized group setting of child lifelong care. Formalized group setting of child lifelong care. Adoption is the first and most likely the best option. There are many couples seeking to adopt an infant. Unfortunately, the costs are enormous and the process agonizingly slow. Currently, adoption is managed as a for-profit operation. It needs to be government funded and controlled. Foster care is best suited for older youngsters, even as young as 1 or 2 years of age, but not infants. It is an available option, but only one of the other two fail. The third option is a form of care provided by loving caregivers from birth through childhood until high school or college completion. It is similar in purpose to an orphanage, but not with the morality carrying baggage. The book ends with the following comment reflecting my belief in the ultimate desire of mankind to solve this problem affecting mankind throughout recorded history. You can go back to the Greeks, you can go to the Egyptians. It was a controversy then, thousands of years ago. The last paragraph is, to every woman carrying the unborn baby within her womb, let us say again, the power to deny life or bring on a living human being is now in your hands. Let goodness prevail and therefore decide. Throughout the history of civilized mankind, abortion has been the one subject that good, respected, and moral people have found intractable to intellectual solace. Largely accepted as a fact of life, it nevertheless exists outside mankind's comfort zone. That was true in the time of the pharaohs, Aristotle, Augustine, medieval Europe, the early colonies of America, and remains true to this day. The fact it nevertheless exists outside mankind's comfort zone is not only true, but more importantly, it is the ultimate challenge affecting our daily lives. Let us accept the challenge as a propitious opportunity to carve a breakthrough, coalescing the American spirit, seeking unification, though entering arguments are entirely divergent. Let us find the path to intellectual solace, and let understanding, goodness, love, and caring lead the way. That completes the book. As you can tell from the end, it's different from other recommendations. I certainly honor all the acts of judicial and legislative that occurred. Well, we lost 60 million babies since the 60s, and we lose 2,000 to 3,000 every day. I think we need to emphasize the goodness that I believe exists in womanhood. You know it exists in motherhood, and motherhood comes from womanhood, by the way. So let us consider that and try a new pathway. That's only one of the several suggestions, but that's the single most important one. So I thank you all for listening, and I appreciate ReadersMagnet for giving me this opportunity to talk to you today. Thank you very much.